friends, faculty, and students, today in the United States, there are roughly 11 million undocumented immigrants living and working in cities around the country. An undocumented immigrant refers to a foreign national living in the United States without proper authorization. As it stands, there is no permanent path to citizenship for the significant part of the population that does not have legal status. A path to citizenship would allow individuals who are here legally to become citizens as long as they complete all of the requirements. On behalf of my debate team, I stand resolved that the United States government should provide a path to citizenship. Now, more than ever, there is a great need to enact immigration laws that reflect modern American values and will keep the country thriving. It is clear that while our country has advanced in exciting and new ways over the years, what has not changed is our immigration system. The failures of this outdated system have resulted in the deterioration of workplace conditions and has ripped apart families through lousy deportation laws. Setting up a path to citizenship is the most efficient way to address the immigrants in this country because they are already here, living and working in cities across the country. Our main argument today is that there are vast economic benefits that come with legalizing the undocumented immigrants in this country. Research shows that if local or legal immigrants will add to our gross domestic product by about $1.5 trillion. This means a lot of good for the economy because more money will be circulating through the economy and thus in turn, the economy is better able to support and growth and new jobs. This increase in GDP also boosts wages for both native-born citizens and legalized immigrant workers alike. This evidence comes from Raul Hinojosa Ojeda, author and professor at UCLA. The economy also gains from legalized immigrants because these newly legalized individuals pay more in taxes. According to a report from the Executive Office of the President, the Congressional Budget Office, and others, have estimated that undocumented immigrants will pay more in both federal and state taxes once they come out of the shadows and start working legally. The additional taxes paid by new and legalizing immigrants would not only offset the proposed cost of the Senate immigration bill, but would be substantial enough to lower the deficit by $850 million over 20 years. And since these illegal immigrants are now able to work above the board, these individuals are estimated to pay an additional $2 billion per year in additional state and local taxes. Also, immigrants buy American goods. They are living and working in this country, and they have a purchasing power of about $1.9 trillion annually. Without this $1.9 trillion in purchasing power, Americans will have lower wages and fewer employment opportunities. These immigrants living in America also greatly support the housing and real estate markets. Whether through renting apartments or buying houses, immigrants are paying a lot to landowners who are overwhelmingly American citizens. These landlords then see their properties and investments increase in value, according to Alex Norwesta at the Cato Institute. Our next argument is focused on the social and moral benefits of creating a path to citizenship. As it stands now, undocumented immigrants are forced to live and work in unsafe conditions because of their legal status. They are subjected to violations of labor laws, wage theft, and other forms of employment violations, and this affects American workers as well. Building a path to citizenship would ensure that these injustices would cease, because the individuals would no longer need to work outside of the law. Legalization would also mean less crime, according to research. Since these formerly illegal immigrants will gain legal status, they are more likely to cooperate in investigations and will be less likely to feel the need to live outside the law. And lastly, creating a path to citizenship means that families will no longer be ripped apart by deportation. In the United States, there are over 5,000 children in the foster care system whose parents are undocumented immigrants because they have either been detained by immigration officials or deported with no way to reach their families. If there is no path for citizenship for immigrant families, then by the year 2016, there will be upwards of 15,000 children in the foster care system. Ultimately, the advantages of providing a path to citizenship in the United States is a stronger, more unified nation. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Just go whenever.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of your main arguments is that legal immigration would add $1 trillion to the country's GDP, mainly through purchasing power and buying goods. What's the current purchasing power of all U.S. citizens?
I am not sure.
So the $1 trillion could be not that significant when you take all of America into consideration. Also, do legal immigrants not purchase goods? Current U.S. citizens purchase goods?
Yes, they do, but making them legal would help with, because they can get better jobs, they'll, be making more money, so then that will add to the GDP.
Can you also talked about how illegal immigrants are working in poor working conditions, even like for lower than minimum wage. So if there's a minimum wage set in place by the government and two identical individuals apply for a job at a fast food restaurant, for example, in today's currency, they both be paid $7.25 regardless of if one had a green card or not.
Well, because these people are illegal, like they, they are able, or they're not able to, they are subjected to, they don't have legal status, so they are able to work under the board, and that's how they are being employed, because they don't have that legal status. Employers are not going to give them the money that they deserve because they are legal and because they can take advantage of them.
Okay, and a legal path to citizenship will save taxpayer dollars, right?
I don't think I stated that. I said that it would help, they would pay more, but I'm not, wait, what was the question? I'm sorry.
Will a legal path to citizenship save taxpayer dollars?
I didn't state that in mine. I just said that they're going to be paying more once they're legal.
Okay.
So I didn't say that they were going to be.
Well, what's the break even in them paying more as opposed to creating a path to citizenship?
What do you mean?
That's time. Cool. Negative constructive.
Immigration has been at the forefront of many of America's issues since the very birth of our country. America is in fact referred to as the melting pot of the world. Immigrants came to the U.S. in the 19th century seeking greater economic opportunity, religious freedom, education, and so much more. Today, America still holds a draw to immigrants for many reasons. What our opponents have proposed today is a permanent pathway to citizenship. However, this solution to our ongoing battle with immigration is greatly flawed. By opening the door to already 11 million illegal immigrants in our country, we will entice many more immigrants from all over the world to come along as well. History has proven that the legalization of an action causes an immediate popularity in it. For example, Prohibition banned the manufacture, transportation, and sale of intoxicating liquors. It was a difficult act to enforce, much like immigration is today. And although smuggling and speakeasies occurred, according to Smith in 2007, there was a 30% decrease in alcohol consumption. However, when alcohol was again legalized, its taboo appearance disappeared and consumption shot back up to 52%. Once it is made clear to the world that we have an open door policy, who's to say how much our population will increase and just how rapidly? Are we all really willing to make the competition for jobs even riskier? According to the Daily Business Report in 2015, 53% of all college graduates under the age of 25 were either unemployed or underemployed. The overwhelming increase in immigrants does nothing to solve that issue. Instead, it puts immigrants before native-born, tax-paying Americans. Another disadvantage to our opponent's theory is the harmonious idea of keeping families together and protecting them from deportation. Although a kind-hearted idea, this is extremely unrealistic. I would like to point out that immigrants are deported for illegal activity, repeated immigration violations, re-entering the country illegally, etc. It would be absurd for us to start letting American murderers and robbers continue on their lives outside of jail due to the existence of their loved ones. Although it may be sad, it is the law. According to VetFriends.com in 2012, there was 1,388,000 active duty troops. According to the U.S. Immigration Act, there are 409,849 immigrants deported in that same year. Soldiers leave their countries every day to protect our country overseas, and we see it as a heroic action. Shall we ask them to stay behind as well so that we can all feel morally at peace, and in turn leave our country vulnerable to attack? According to the U.S. Immigration Enforcement in 2010, 400,000 people were deported. At the same time, there were a total of 112 million families in the country that year. The amount of families torn apart by deportation versus the total number of families in the U.S. at the time is drastically different. We would like to view this with a utilitarianism perspective, as well as prioritize our American citizens today. Although immigration would help many immigrants reunite with their families and give them opportunities, it would hurt a greater number of Americans. We would be adding more job-hungry people to our society, which already holds 12.3 unemployed Americans today, according to RPNC. I would like to again remind you of the ratio of deported immigrants to families in America. I ask you to all consider what I've said today as an attempt at protecting all of your rights as citizens and your rightfully deserved dreams as Americans. Thank you.
Other question?
Hi. Would you agree that the immigrants who came here illegally, at their own risk, with the knowledge that they may have their lives uprooted, in order to provide a better life for themselves and their family, are very similar to our forefathers who founded our country?
I would say absolutely they are very similar. However, we live in a much different country than we did then, where our population has grown drastically, our country border lines have grown drastically. We have much different laws and issues in our society that we're dealing with, so therefore I think we have to look at it from a totally different perspective than we did at that time.
You say that most deported immigrants are deported due to illegal activity. Although it may be true that they are deported due to illegal activity, a study by Stanford University found that legalizing 1% of the population of immigrants decreased crime per capita by 2% in California. How would you respond to this decrease of criminal activity?
Do you know when that test was taken, what year?
I think it was 2012.
Okay, awesome. Well, mine was also in 2012. I don't think that percentage is good enough for any of us to deem that all illegal immigrants are innocent. The Department of Homeland Security estimated that immigrants, illegal and legal, comprised 20% of inmates in jails and prison in 2012.
You also claim that the troops who willingly leave their families, go to war to protect our freedoms, and deported immigrants who leave our families by force of law are the same. Do you not think that the family of an illegal immigrant who is deported is not more emotionally traumatizing, considering that they have no say in the matter?
I share your sympathy for deported families. However, according to a survey conducted in 2005, 1 in 8 soldiers suffer from PTSD after being overseas, and comparing foreign-born immigrants that are deported from our country to American soldiers fighting for our rights is completely irrelevant and can be offensive to some Americans.
Given that illegal immigrants who are already here are taking low-level manual labor jobs, such as construction and farming, would you agree that the immigrants are not creating competition for...
That is time. Cool. All right, we're now ready for the negative attack.
So the affirmative has argued that a path to citizenship will benefit our economy because immigrants will contribute to the GDP. But illegal immigrants are already living here in our country, probably consuming these goods every day, already part of the GDP. Just because their legal status changes doesn't mean they'll suddenly begin buying more goods or adding on top of that GDP number. If anything, creating this legal process will only encourage many other foreign citizens to migrate. With our high income rates and traditional success overall, everyone will want to come if we open the door. This will lead to overpopulation and harm to current U.S. citizens having to compete in the job market. Jeff Sessions of the U.S. Budget Committee wrote that an increase in labor force will depress wages and increase unemployment at least through the end of the decade. More immigrants to the U.S. results in more resources being used, like healthcare, education, and Social Security. The 1986 IRCA amnesty cost over $78 billion in the 10 years following, and this is from the Center for Immigration Studies. So not only is it implementing this process going to be expensive, but the government will also have to pay for these resources. And the country's deficit couldn't possibly be reduced. So will we break even on the cost spent to make this happen than what we're going to gain from adding them to our population? The affirmative also says that immigrants will pay more taxes if they become citizens. But if this is true, then why would they come out of the shadows only to have to pay more money than they already do? Senator Ted Cruz said this would be a process taking up to 13 years, and they'd have to learn English, they'd be paying hefty fines. So a path to citizenship really would not benefit the economy in any way, especially if these illegal citizens aren't going to take advantage of this. The social and moral arguments of the affirmative are that there will be less crime because immigrants will be legal and willing to cooperate. But this is just an assumption of their future behaviors. Allowing more people to migrate yields a higher risk for drug deals, weapons, and potential terrorist attacks. I quote from the Center of Immigration Studies again that 19 terrorists from September 11th were foreign citizens that came here illegally as tourists, travelers, students, and this is also true of perpetrators including Ramzi Youssef, the guy behind the World Trade Center bombing in 1993. The affirmative also states that immigrants are living and working in unsafe conditions. They lack evidential support that all immigrants are subject to these violations. This argument presents the fallacy of composition. Just because the situation may be true for a certain group of illegal citizens doesn't mean the entire population of immigrants are experiencing wage theft in violation of labor laws. There are many different types of immigrants, from unskilled professionals, investors, students, refugees, and asylum seekers. And this research is from Cordero and Nunez from 2013. Certainly not all of these people are in unfair conditions. Another moral argument they make is that deportation rips families apart. This claim is a fallacy of misericordiam to gain sympathy for illegal immigrants. There are thousands of families separated pridefully because of our military, yet we're giving privileges to the foreign people who have broken our laws and decided to live here illegally. What other illegal activities are we going to tolerate and reward? Although this legal path to citizenship may be the moral thing to do, Senator Rand Paul calls it an act of love, and that we can't invite the whole world to the U.S. Just because it's a nice thing that we'd be doing doesn't necessarily mean it will be good for our country and the economy. And Mean Girls, when you invite the whole school to your whole party, you only have enough cheese and crackers for 8 people, therefore resulting in disaster.
Oh, right over there. We are ready for cross-examination.
Okay.
Okay, so given that illegal immigrants who are already here are taking low-level manual labor jobs such as construction and farming, would you agree that immigrants are not creating competition for the jobs that educated Americans want?
That is a possibility, but even though you're adding more people to the population, that's still more jobs that we need to create. Just because a person has, a degree or has the legal status doesn't mean that they're able to find a job in that field. They could be trying to find a work at McDonald's just as well, competing with those immigrants.
Okay. If you suggest that implementing the legalization process will be expensive and that the government will pay for the changes, are we not already spending, as calculated by AmericanProgress.org, $285 billion over a 1-year period on deportation and enforcement of the borders?
So you're saying that we were going to take that 285 and put it towards a path to citizenship, but don't we still need that 285 or whatever number to still control the borders? We're not going to just completely transfer all the funds. We're going to be having this pay for both.
Okay. There are approximately 11 million illegal immigrants currently living in the U.S. Your argument about terrorism insinuates the attacks are weekly, if not monthly. Can you account for this lack of alleged terrorism?
No, not specifically, but there is a potential for more attacks. It is higher for, if people are willing to break the law and come here legally, don't you think that they'd be more willing to break other laws? I have some evidence saying that from the Pew Hispanic Center, that of those sentenced for federal crimes, non-citizen Hispanics were 74% of immigration offenders. So of people convicted, 74% of them broke the law already. 25% of them were drug offenders, and 6% of them were firearm offenders. So there's proof that they are holding on to these drugs or possessing these weapons.
Cool. We are ready for the affirmative attack. Oh, clapping sometimes happens. I haven't been doing it.
Okay. The negative side of this debate formulates our argument based on a few specific arguments that are not quite on point. The negative argues that by allowing the 11 million people who are here illegally to become legal citizens, that we will encourage more immigrants to flood into our country. Their example of this phenomenon is that when the United States government removed prohibition restrictions, the amount of people drinking alcohol experienced a massive spike. Although this seems like a sound and logical connection to make, we must remember that causation does not equal correlation. I would like to argue that during Prohibition, the only reason that alcohol consumption decreased was that mass production stopped. Prohibitions end, allowed alcohol production to resume, and the consumption trends that were already in motion continued right where they left off. I do not believe that legalizing the immigrants who are already here and creating a more effective legalization method would increase the amount of immigrants, because regardless of what the policy of immigration is, it is illegal now, but that's not deterring anyone. They're still illegal immigrants. We are proposing that by creating a legal path, we will solve the problems that are occurring due to the illegal status of these immigrants. By creating a system for legalizing the immigrants who are here, we will be able to tap into the revenue potential of the illegal immigrants now. According to NBC, 11 million immigrants would be the equivalent to more than $1.5 trillion in a period of 10 years, and would mean more money circulating and the ability for the economy to support more jobs. So even if the legalization of immigrants led to an increase in overall immigration, the economy would definitely benefit. The negative also claims that immigrants are competing for our jobs and creating a bad job market. This claim is made irrelevant by many studies that have been conducted regarding how immigration affects American jobs. In fact, according to the LA Times, the high demand for these services and the pressure for keeping their costs low and prices competitive have generated incentives to hire undocumented workers. The reform creates a legal channel for employers to fill these jobs at competitive wages after they've been advertised to native workers. As with high-skilled newcomers, research shows that bringing in foreign workers for these jobs won't crowd out Americans. One reason for this being is the long-run demographic and educational trends. There's a decreasing supply of natives for these occupations because the U.S. population is aging and becoming more educated. Educated Americans are less likely to work manual labor jobs and jobs that do not require a high-caliber education. This is the natural trend for a growing society that is on the forefront of technology and education. Immigrants benefit from our established economy and in turn will benefit America as a whole by giving much-needed labor. The argument made by the negative that most immigrants are deported for illegal activity, and then by legalizing immigrants, we would be the equivalent to letting murderers and robbers roam our streets. This slippery slope argument can be dispatched simply by analyzing all the data that states otherwise. In a report by NBC, according to the geographic data actually, it appears that in New York, immigration may have reduced crime, or at least correlated with lower crime rates. As explained by Chrissy Long, a graduate student at the Harvard Kennedy School, the study found that immigration actually appears to have a protective effect on crime, as the presence of immigrants in New York neighborhoods often means decreased crime rates. Given that being an immigrant without the proper papers is a crime in itself, it only follows by logic that illegal immigrants are deported due to illegal activity. Finally, we can analyze the claim that the families of soldiers are similar to the families of deported immigrants. Although this is a useful argument to appeal to the pathos of the audience, the argument is an example of a false analogy. Soldiers volunteer for their services for the United States to protect our freedoms abroad. Illegal immigrants are deported against their will, and therefore their families are ill-prepared for this event. It is far more traumatic to lose a husband or a father when you have absolutely no idea that tomorrow he won't be coming home. He is now considered a criminal when all he did was try to give their family a better chance of life. Of course, this is the most traumatic situation I can imagine. I wouldn't wish that upon my family or anyone else's.
Okay, so you claim that illegal immigration reduces crime, but you gave the example from New York. What about the U.S.-Mexican border, which is kind of the whole thing's coming about? Do you have any evidence about, because there's drug wars and everything like that?
I don't have any specific information about that, but I feel like with more fluid legalization process, we would have less criminals here because they would stop focusing so much on the illegal immigrants and more on the actual criminals who are doing harm and not just normal employees like in restaurants.
See. So you said regardless of the policy, immigrants will come. That may be true, but if you open the gates, how many are going to come, and how do you think that you're going to be able to handle and be prepared for all of this? Because right now we have 11 million.
I think that with legalizing the ones who are already here and improving our legalization system, there will be a better process for handling all these immigrants and perhaps even a more effective process to handle these new ones so that we can actually utilize their labor and put them into our economy more or less.
So what do you propose, like something Ellis Island, like where they just go through a line and they look?
I don't have a specific policy that I would employ, but I think that if we put our best minds to it, I think it would be better than just deporting everyone.
Okay, you said immigrants are coming over anyway, might as well make it legal. Oh, well, along those lines. And do you think that's fair for those who have been on the legal waiting list for years?
I don't think it's fair to them, but we have a problem that we have to deal with now. And if we don't deal with that problem, it's going to make things a whole lot worse. So I think that maybe if they gave those people priority, then that would be better. But we have to do something, and maybe it won't be fair for everyone, but we think that it's a good process.
Okay, you said $1.5 trillion if we legalize, or if we allow immigrants to come in. How much do you think it would cost to naturalize all of them? Do you think it's going to cost taxpayers money to?
I think that considering deportation and considering all the expenses we have, then it would break even.
We are now ready for our affirmative defense.
Okay, hello. Basically, I'm going to be going over the main arguments we've had this whole debate and crystallizing those and defending our constructive that we have. Okay, basically, our most important argument we had this whole debate is the economy argument. Basically, our constructive said that Hinojosa said that 11 million immigrants would be the equivalent to more than 1.5 trillion, or roughly 1% added to the gross domestic product in 10 years. This means that a lot of goods for the economy. It means there's more money circulating in the economy. It means the economy is able to support a lot more jobs, so everybody wins. This is a win-win situation for us to have these illegal immigrants become permanent citizens. My second argument is basically going against how she said it's going to be very expensive, yet our opponent contradicts herself, saying that it's going to be a long process and it's going to cost these immigrants a lot of money. She's saying that the government's going to pay for it, but really these people are paying for that process. These hefty fines that she's stating are what the people are going to be paying to become a citizen. Again, these people are paying for this, not really necessarily the government. Again, another important argument we had was they talked about terrorism. These immigrants could be terrorists. Just because one extreme case, 9/11, does not mean that every single immigrant is going to be a terrorist or going to be a drug dealer. Most of these people are trying to make a living for their families, and they're struggling doing that, being illegal. Less than 1% of all the illegal population has ever been a terrorist. It's very, very rare. That's a very slippery slope again. And another important argument was our crime. In our constructive, we had an argument stating that legalizing 1% of the population in the country corresponds to a 2% decrease in crime per capita, around 200,000 fewer crimes every year on the national level. She's stating that these illegal immigrants are the people that are taking up our jail cells. They're doing this because they're not legal. If they had legal jobs, they could make legal money and wouldn't have to resort to these illegal ways of making money, therefore going into jails. Another argument we had that was very important, that was overlooked, was the working conditions these people are going through. Due to the illegal status, we may not even know the extent of the people who work in these conditions. And yes, not every single person, illegal immigrant, is going to be working in these bad conditions, but that does not make it immoral. These people are working in conditions that are not fair and are not just to anyone. They deserve to be legalized to make money for their families because they're making money for us. If they have more money from legal jobs and a higher wage, they can put more money into the cash flow, which goes to my first argument of the GDP. They're going to be bringing more money into this economy. And finally, one of their largest arguments they had was about these military people and how they're being taken away from their families. They are they volunteer to have this job. They do not have to go to the military. They do not have to leave their families. These illegal immigrants are forcefully removed from their families in the drop of a hat. And their families have to go through these traumatic things. And that wasn't even countering our argument of foster care. What we're saying is that these parents, mother, fathers, brothers, sisters, are being taken out of the homes, and these children are left to go into foster care. The foster care system is a very dangerous place, and up to 15,000 children are going to go if these people get deported. And speaking of, deportation is very expensive. $12,500 per illegal immigrant is how much it costs. That does not outweigh, or that is not. The utilitarian argument to this is it's better for everyone if we legalize these people because it's too expensive to deport them, and these children deserve to have a home of their natural families. And it's going to be, again, saving us money, and I feel like I have upheld every argument we had in our constructive speech, and their consequences do not outweigh the benefits we have given you. The danger of these illegal immigrants is not worth how much money it's going to cost, because we're going to be giving money into the GDP, and they should be legalized because they can help us. Thank you.
pathway to citizenship is not efficient, it is costly, and it is not a way to handle immigration. To start off with the whole soldier and immigrant issue, the law is the law. The affirmative questions the difference between a deployed soldier and a deported immigrant. We defend that the difference is substantial. The soldier did not break the law. Our justice system is strict but fair. If our system was lenient, it would be corrupt. So, while the separation from his family is tragic, it is not right to reward somebody who's broken the law while the other is fighting for our country. Having said that, we have effectively proven that pathway to citizenship would give amnesty to those undeserving of it. There's a long line of people who have followed the rules and done everything they need to do in the lengthy process of naturalization, and it would be unfair to put those in the back of the line to illegal immigrants. It would be a political system that creates a faster path for those who have broken the law. Speaking of that dreadfully long path, why would these immigrants go through this extremely difficult legal path? Because in the 1986 amnesty IRCA legalization, only a small percentage actually went through and did the naturalization. They stayed with being illegal because they didn't want to go through the process. Also with that, to defend the notion that immigration process is in fact costly, according to a study by the Center of Immigration Studies, we spent $78 billion in 10 years just to pay for the immigration process. Like the affirmative said, the money it would cost would not come out of the immigrants' pockets. Some of it would, however, the majority we would have to pay government officials to process all of that paperwork and get everybody to where they need to be. So that would be more costly than them paying it from their own money. Also, it invites fraud. So if they do decide to go through the legal path system, there's a chance that those who don't want to go through the whole process are just going to forge affidavits, receipts, other documents, proof of eligibility, which is not what we want. We want to keep it as clean as possible, but gosh knows we're all going to try and cheat the system. So that is all I have to say, and I think I've upheld our position quite well.
All right, we're now ready for the affirmative summary. Give me two seconds.
Immigration reform has been a hot topic for decades, and hopefully today the evidence we have presented you today has convinced you that passing immigration reform would be better for the country. There will always be people that are dissatisfied with such reform, but again, this will help our country. From an economic to a social and ethical perspective, we're not saying that there will be no problems from passing such a reform bill, but then again, there is always issues that arise from new bills. Just look at the new healthcare program. There's always these problems that you'll have to get fixed in the process. The facts that we are stating that it will boost our economy and increase our GDP by 1.5 trillion in 10 years, and reduce our deficit by 850 billion in the next 20, from a whopping 18 trillion. This, they're helping our economy by giving us a 1.9 trillion power, 1.9 trillion power buying power. And should we not help them, because they're helping us and supporting our economy. This will also have the world look at us in a new light for having our illegal immigrants legalized and not tearing parents away from their children. Now, play this in your mind. You're separated from your child and sent to another country. You do not have any means of communication to reach your child. Now, how would you feel? Wouldn't that break your heart? Wouldn't you be scared for your child? Now, think about those 500,000 children that are in orphanages today. Aren't they missing their parents? Now, they believe in our country when they come. This is the country where dreams come true. But as of now, those dreams are being crushed down. Our opponents have argued that illegal immigrants are stealing jobs for Americans, which is not true. Americans do not want to work low-paying jobs such as in farming and low-paying jobs in construction. They go to college to get higher-paying jobs. they have the argument of having to compete for a job at McDonald's. Well, they're not going to hire. They're going to be hiring a person for their skills, not if they're legal or legal. And they have argued that our self-volunteering troops that protect our freedoms are on the same boat as illegal immigrants. Our soldiers go overseas with their own free will because they believe they have a duty to protect the citizens of this country, not like illegal immigrants who are forced to leave their families. They even have compared illegal immigrants to an alcoholic beverage. They stated that immigrants comprise of 20% of inmates of jails. Well, of course they're going to be comprising that high is because they're arrested for being illegal, not because they have committed murder or something of the sort. Our opponents stated that it will entice the entire world to come to America, which is weird because wasn't there a failed reform that is vaguely similar to the one that is being passed now in 1986 by Reagan? Well, where was the world of immigrants during that time? Even if they were to come, wouldn't that be a good thing? The more immigrants that come here legally through the process that has been set up by the reform, the bigger our economy gets, the more jobs are created, the better lifestyles we get to live. Pass immigration reform, it'll help you, the American people, and your children in the long run. Get this reform passed before it gets even worse than it is now. There's still hope to salvage our failed immigration policy, and we have to act now. Thank you.
And our negative summary. Mm-hmm.
While our opponents have made some decent points, they've completely ignored the underlying issue of a possible path to citizenship, the current citizens themselves. Our own Constitution says no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. Our opponents have made the mistake of focusing solely on potential immigrants instead of those currently in the country legally, whether of American heritage or not. As we've pointed out with past illegal activities, making these activities legal causes an increase. In the case of immigration reform, this will lead to overpopulation, loss of jobs for those legally in the country, and overall cause issues in the American system as we know it. Our opponents speak of raising the GDP, yet the $1 trillion increase they claim will occur over 10 years equates to only a 1% increase. A 50-cent increase in the minimum wage could do the same thing. They also state a path to citizenship will increase the workforce. However, an economic analysis done by the budget department of the government has concluded the increase in a labor force will actually depress average wages and increase unemployment through the end of this decade. And if immigration continues at current levels, the nation's population will increase from 301 million today to 468 million by 2060, a 50% increase according to the Center for Immigration Studies. Sylvester had asked where those immigrants were coming from in the 1906 reform. They're here now. That's the 11 million. They weren't here 30 years ago. And then also a study by the American Academy of Sciences found that cheap labor of illegal immigrants caused a 44% decrease in wages among Americans from 1980 to 1994. This increase in population has depressed the wages and increased unemployment. As far as the fallacy of miscoordination in the argument that deporting immigrants away from their families as opposed to a soldier volunteering to leave his country, are illegals not volunteering to leave their home countries? They don't have to work in poor conditions. They don't have to risk tearing their families apart or leaving their children in foster care. They make a choice. They know the downfalls when they make that choice, and they do it still of their own free will. The deportation argument is laid in pathos and has no effect on actual circumstances. They also create a false analogy of causation versus correlation in regards to the crime argument. Yes, some illegals might be in jail due to the fact that they were arrested for being illegal, but they offer no statistics on how many those actually might be. It's entirely possible that 20% could be a murderer or rapist or criminals that don't deserve to walk on the streets. As current legal American citizens, it would be foolish and self-detrimental not to agree with our arguments. The House should not create a